Okay, so contract modifications. You're partway through a contract and you've already performed some of what you're supposed to do, and now there's a change in the contract. How is this accounted for? Okay, so, I could probably move on to that. Okay, contract modifications. You have to answer the basic question. Does this modification create a new contract, or is it just a modification of an existing one? So if it creates a new performance obligation, then we're going to account for it one way. If it is a modification of an existing contract, we do something else. So what's the difference? If it's a separate performance obligation, you have to have two conditions. The goods have to be distinct. The company sells them separately. They're not interdependent with other goods and services. And the company has the right to receive payment for those goods at the standalone selling price of those goods and services. So these are your separate performance obligation conditions. Chances are on any of the homework they will tell you which it is. But let's look at an example here. This is the company has a contract to sell 100 products for $100 each, 10,000 total, over the next 6 months. We've delivered 60 of the products, and now the company modifies the contract by promising to deliver 20 more at 95 each, for a total of 1,900. And it says the standalone price for these items, that is the standalone price for these items, and they regularly sell them separately. So we say, is it a modification or a separate performance obligation? And the goods are distinct, the company sells them separately, not interdependent. They can receive consideration that reflects the standalone selling price. So both conditions are met, so we can just account for it as a separate performance obligation, and it does not impact the original contract. So you've got the total revenue remaining for the contracts. You've got the rest of the original contract is now 40 because you've already done 60, so you'll get $100 each on those. And then this new contract, you'll have the 20 at 95, 19, so your total consideration due from this particular customer is the $5,900. Okay, so now what if those conditions are not met? In this case, we use what's called prospective modification. In other words, you kind of glom the two contracts together and come up with basically a new price per unit after you add the contracts together. So they say there's no standalone selling price, and they're not distinct. And so what's happened so far in the contract does not get changed. We don't go back and change any journal entries we've made. But going forward, prospectively, we do the following. We've got what's happened so far on the original contract is 60 times 100 is 6,000. We let that right alone. But going forward, we owe 40 more on that contract at 100. So 40 times 100 is 4,000. The consideration due with the modification, now we're supposed to do 20 more at 95. So total is 5,900, 60 units. And so we simply divide that 59 by 60 units, and the per unit revenue we're going to recognize is the $98.33. You recognize the same amount either way over the total of the contract, but this is this reflects that it's part of the same contract. It's just a modification of that contract. We treat it as not a separate performance obligation, and yeah, so you just have to sort of be, the one thing that'll trip you up on this, on the, when it's part of the same contract, they'll say, okay, so we've got 40 more to sell here of this, so, account for the next 10. Well, the 10 is still going to be under this original one. They're not going to be under that one, okay? So it's still, the next 10 would be at the 100. That'll save you a little bit on the homework. Okay, so contract modifications, you just have to figure out separate performance obligation or not. If it's a separate one, you just do it as a new performance obligation. If it's not a separate performance obligation, then you have to use that perspective approach. And I think brief exercises 1821 might be helpful, and then exercises 29 and 30, okay?